Radhya, Radhya Ramakrishna, and I'm here with another brand new topic, the respiratory system. So first of all, we're going to start with a brief intro on what is respiration and types of respiration and much more. So we've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's dive straight into it. So you know how we all need energy to do things? Like for example, our body cells as well need energy. Our body's muscle cells need energy to move a part of our body. Our brain cells need energy to respond and send messages as well to the rest of the part of our body. And the root cells of a plant as well need energy to absorb nutrients and minerals from the soil and give it to the rest of the plant. And even when we sleep, we need energy. So where do we get all this energy from? Well, we get it through a process called respiration. Now, what is respiration? Respiration is the process of producing energy by oxidizing or breaking down of food, that is glucose, into stuff that is useful for the body's daily activities like moving organs and responding to messages and so on. So this oxidizing of food, how exactly do we do it? We do this by utilizing oxygen which we breathe in along with air. Now breathing. This is basically a process where inhalation and exhalation are both done, and breathing is a process where we take oxygen-rich air into our nostrils and then into the lungs, and also we force the carbon dioxide-rich air out of our lungs. So that process is basically called breathing. So breathing and respiration have their own types of differences. This breathing and respiration are different, so let's just clear off these differences. Breathing is a physical process while respiration is a biochemical process. In breathing we inhale the oxygen-rich air and let out the carbon dioxide air in our lungs. We breathe that out, exhale that out, and lungs are the main parts of breathing, while in respiration it's a process of producing energy, oxidizing energy by using the oxygen inhaled into the lungs. Our bodies oxidize glucose, and this process is basically called respiration. We oxidize glucose to produce energy, and in respiration basically every living cell in our body takes a part. So that is respiration and breathing. So we are already done till here. Now moving on to the organs of the respiratory system, we have the nose, pharynx, larynx, the trachea, also known as the windpipe, bronchi, and the lungs. So just in case you're wondering where the bronchioles and alveoli are, we're going to cover them as well. I just didn't write them here, okay? So first, starting with the nose. The nose is the entry point of air. This little thing is the entry point of air. So the nose is the entry point of air, and we breathe in air through the nose, and the nose has two nostrils, and the air goes into the nostrils, into a nasal cavity, into a nasal chamber. This nasal chamber has small hair-like projections lined in it to prevent the dust particles from going into our lungs. Also, the nasal chamber has a lining of mucus, that is a sticky fluid that also traps germs and dust from entering into our nose. So basically, air going into the nasal chamber is moist and is warm and moist, and the kind of air that our lungs would welcome, rather than not the kind of air that our lungs would welcome and is good for the lungs. So that is our nose, and our nose basically is the entry point of air, and it plays a lot of important roles as well. And also, one should always breathe through the nose and not through the mouth, because that's our nose's job, guys, not our mouth. We use our mouth for talking and eating and stuff like that. So yeah, and also the nose has special cells aligned in it for smell as well. And so moving on to the pharynx. Okay. Yeah. So moving on, that is basically when we inhale our air, it goes through the nostrils and then the nasal chamber, then moves on to the pharynx. It's basically behind our mouth, and this is a common point where the food and the air go through. The pharynx leads into two passageways. That is, someone's at the door, and never mind, they can wait. let's finish this video first, okay? So moving on, continuing, the pharynx opens into two passageways. That is, the first one is the food pipe, also known as the gullet or the esophagus, and the second one is the windpipe, also known as the trachea, So our video today is going to revolve around the trachea and further down into the bronchioles and the lungs. So yeah. Next we have the larynx. That is basically, it's a voice box. It's a voice box with two ligamentous folds called vocal cords, and these vocal cords, when air is expelled forcibly through the vocal cords vibrate and this produces sound. So that's exactly how I'm talking to you right now, and how we sing, how we produce sound through the throat, And so basically over years, humans have gotten really good at producing sound. So not just talking, we do stuff like raps and singing as well. And I personally love singing, but that's a topic for later. That's not even a topic, just whatever it is. Let's just move on. Okay, moving on to the trachea or the windpipe. So this is the windpipe. So the windpipe or the trachea starts from the larynx and it runs down. Starts down from the larynx or the voice box, whichever you want to call it. So the trachea starts from the larynx. It runs down to into the middle of the chest up to a short distance, where it divides into two smaller branches called bronchi. And note the plural of bronchi is bronchus. So yeah, the trachea has. Never mind. Okay. So the trachea divides into two smaller branches called the bronchi, and the trachea has C-shaped rings of cartilage surrounding it. The inner lining of the trachea is, they have C-shaped rings of cartilage that prevent it from collapsing, because we don't want our windpipe to be all soft and collapse with the pressure of air. So they have C-shaped rings of cartilage to prevent it from collapsing. And then the trachea, the bronchi, and the bronchioles have ciliated epithelium, and the continuous movement of this cilia pushes out the unwanted particles that may be present along with the air. So if the mucus and hairy lining in your nose don't do the job, this ciliated movement should do it. Otherwise, if it doesn't, we sneeze. Why do we sneeze? To remove the foreign particles that enter along with our mouth, because the enter along with the air that we breathe. And when foreign particles enter, the sensitive mucous membrane in our nose gets irritated. So we sneeze. Sneezing removes the irritant that has entered along with the air, so we sneeze. So moving on, that was just a tidbit or a fun fact, whatever you want to call it. So moving on to the bronchi. So remember when I said the trachea divides into two branches called the bronchi? Well, we're going to learn about this. The plural of bronchi is bronchus. So each bronchus leads into the right and left lung, each respectively, right and left lung respectively. Each of these bronchus are further divided into smaller branches called bronchioles, and these, at the end of each bronchioles are present the tiny microscopic air sacs called alveoli. Singular form of alveoli is alveus. So these alveoli are rich in blood capillaries. The walls of alveoli are surrounded by blood capillaries. So yeah, this is basically where oxygen that we inhale gets absorbed by the blood here, which I'm going to get to in a bit after we learn about lungs. Now these, I'm pretty sure everybody's familiar with lungs. They are basically two soft, spongy, pinkish, elastic organs that are located over the diaphragm, and the left lung is slightly smaller than the right lung to accommodate the heart in between. The left lung has 2 lobes and the right lung has 3 lobes. So the lungs are located on the diaphragm. Man, these spectacles are killing me. I'm just taking them out. These lungs are located on the diaphragm, and each lung obviously important. about, but never mind. So the diaphragm divides the body into two cavities. The above one is known as the chest cavity or the thoracic cavity, and the below one is called the abdominal cavity. So the lungs are guarded by two membranes called the inner and outer pleura, and in between these membranes there is a fluid present, and this fluid acts as a shock absorber, thus protecting the lungs. So protects the lungs. So moving on to gaseous transport. So you ever wondered how the oxygen that we breathe in? I mean, we mostly everybody knows that oxygen is used for our body to produce energy, but have you ever wondered how this happens, or how our body absorbs this oxygen? Well, we're going to learn about that right now. So let's title this gaseous transport in the lungs. So oxygen that we breathe in goes through our nasal passages, that is the nose, the pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, and finally into the lungs, then the bronchioles, into the alveoli. So it goes through the respiratory passageways, and finally goes into the alveoli. And from the alveoli, remember when I said the alveoli are rich in blood capillaries, their walls are surrounded by blood capillaries. Also, alveoli are thin and moist to allow faster diffusion of gases. So it doesn't take all day just for one breath. So yeah. Also, from here, the oxygen, when it goes into the alveoli, it gets absorbed by the blood in the blood capillaries, gets absorbed by the blood, where it gets picked up by hemoglobin in the red blood cells. And from here, the oxygen gets transported to the different tissues, different body tissues and cells that we have in our body, and their oxygen is utilized, and then carbon dioxide is released. Oxygen is utilized and energy is produced, and our cells and our body uses this energy, of course. At the same time, carbon dioxide is also released, and this released carbon dioxide from the blood goes back into the alveoli and then back up the respiratory tract, only to be exhaled out, because we do not need that in our body. But because our body has just used everything that it needs in one breath and is letting out, we basically exhale to remove the extra that our body does not need. So moving on to phases in respiration. We got three phases right now, that is breathing, gaseous transport, and cellular respiration. First of all, breathing. Pretty sure everybody's familiar with breathing, but I'm gonna say it anyways. So breathing involves two steps, that is inhalation and exhalation. Inhalation is the process where we take air in, where we take air rich in oxygen into our nose, into the nostrils, and then into the nasal cavity, then into the windpipe, and then finally into the lungs. And exhalation, where we let carbon dioxide rich air out of our body, we force it out of our body through this process called exhalation, and this entire thing is known as breathing, which is a process in respiration. It's basically the first step of respiration is breathing in and then breathing out. So moving on, gaseous transport. After we breathe air in, it moves into a trachea, then into the lungs and into the alveoli, and here the oxygen gets absorbed by the blood in the blood capillaries, where it gets picked up and gets mixed with hemoglobin in the red blood cells, and from here it gets transported to the different body tissues and cells that we have, and there the cells and tissues work their magic and utilize this oxygen, and energy is produced, and then carbon dioxide is also produced, only to go back into the alveoli, into the lungs, and then finally they will be eventually exhaled. Now, cellular respiration is basically the internal respiration that happens between the cells of our body. I mean, like they happen. They basically the respiration that the cells take place. The respiration that our cells do. Our cells don't exactly have their own pair of lungs, but cellular respiration is basically the process where our cells use this oxygen to oxidize the glucose and produce energy in the form of ATP, that is short for adenosine triphosphate. Triphosphate. So that is cellular respiration. Moving on to common respiratory diseases. So this basically, y'all, was the process of respiration and how our body uses this oxygen and uses it to produce energy through this great process called respiration. Man, damn it, creation is amazing. But yeah, so yeah. Moving on, we should also know about a few of the common respiratory diseases because, well, they're just useful in life, but known about this stuff. So first on our list is bronchitis. Bronchitis is a respiratory disease that causes inflammation in the bronchi. So basically, this is caused by a virus, and our bronchi gets inflamed and irritated. These irritated bronchi then get inflamed. Then get inflamed or get swollen up, or swelling happens, which blocks the bronchial passageways, and this causes in suddenly coughing spells or shortness in breath suddenly. So yeah, bronchitis is caused mainly due to a virus, or air pollution and smoking can also cause bronchitis. So mind you people, if you care about your health, please stop smoking and air pollution. Anyway, moving on to bronchitis treatment. Drinking plenty of water, hand washing frequently, following a well-balanced diet and adequate rest can prevent or make that illness. It can prevent bronchitis basically. Moving on to asthma. So asthma is a chronic disease, which is also respiratory disease. This also causes the inflammation and swelling of the bronchi, but this happens periodically. So basically, during an asthma attack, a patient may experience shortness in breath, tightness in the chest, and that situation is no good, trust me. Asthma is basically, let's see, what can trigger asthma? Allergies and air pollution and allergens can trigger an asthma attack, and the treatments include
corticosteroids.
What am I even talking about? Okay. Now the treatment for asthma includes bronchodilators that are used for inhaling medicine that are with corticosteroids, and this is basically prescribed by the doctors or whoever that is responsible for helping us to this is prescribed by them to clear the air passageways and give little relief. Moving on to pneumonia. Pneumonia is also a respiratory disease that basically it is caused by a bacterium that when it basically comes when we inhale it or by contact, and this bacterium goes into the alveoli and multiplies there, and the alveoli might get filled with fluid, and this situation is also no good, and basically it's caused by a bacterium that we inhale in by air or by contact, and its treatment includes an antibiotic that is penicillin. Moving on to tuberculosis, or TB for short. Tuberculosis is also a respiratory disease that is also caused by a bacterium. In tuberculosis, basically a person gets incredibly big coughing fits, and they're incredibly painful coughing fits, and in tuberculosis, a person may experience low fever, and it's not good. This is basically caused due to a bacterium that we get by contact or by air or due to sputum, and etc. And tuberculosis, the treatment for tuberculosis includes BCG vaccine or an antibiotic that is known as Streptomycin, an antibiotic known as streptomycin. So these were the common respiratory diseases: bronchitis, asthma, pneumonia, and tuberculosis. So with this we come to an end of today's video. Yeah, that's basically it for respiratory system, and I'll see you all with another video that is probably going to be circulatory system in next video. Until next time, I'm Radhya. I'll see you next video. Bye bye.